The protostar mirror. By the time you hear this, I may already be gone. Not dead, at least not in any way the ship's medbay can describe. They'll say my vitals were normal right up until the moment the monitors stopped recognizing me as a person at all. They'll tell you my body was still there, breathing, eyes open, mouth moving, and yet the system flagged my existence as an error. I am recording this because it's the only way I can still be sure that I am the one speaking. My name is Dr. Jonah Rhee, Stellar Formation Specialist, mission scientist aboard the research vessel Sigrid. We were dispatched to the young stellar object catalogued as YSO Rho 73, a protostar wrapped in a thick cocoon of gas and dust, a bright embryo in a dark womb. You don't care about the mission parameters. You want to know about the object. So did we. We found it in the accretion disk, orbiting inside a storm of falling stone and ice, exactly where no stable orbit should exist. The Sigrid scopes picked up a persistent void, a perfect absence, a hole in the spectrum. No reflection, no emission, just a round shadow in the data. At first we thought it was an artifact, some sensor glitch, until we aligned 3 different instruments and the shadow stayed. A perfectly smooth body about 12 meters across, in an orbit that ignored the turbulence around it, as if the chaos simply deferred to it. We called it the sphere, because scientists get tired too. If you're hearing this, it means someone eventually listened to our final transmission. Maybe you're a recovery crew. Maybe you're another scientist hunting answers where we left only ruins. Maybe, if things have gone very wrong, you're something else. It doesn't matter. You need to understand what the sphere is. More importantly, you need to understand what it does to your reflection. The Sigrid was not a large ship, but when you live inside her long enough, the narrow corridors and humming panels start to feel like ribs and veins. We had been out for 7 months by the time we reached YSO Rho 73, living in a tin lung poised on the knife edge of a newborn star. We were 6. Commander Alina Park, commander and pilot, ex-military, thin as a filament, always standing like the artificial gravity was just a suggestion. Dr. Tamsin Oku, astrophysicist, quiet and methodical, who talked to the protostar the way some people pray. Chief Technician Haru Sato, the one who kept the Sigrid alive, who could lull a failing fusion reactor back to health with a wrench and a muttered swear. Dr. Miguel Andrade, psychologist and mission counselor, ostensibly there to keep us all sane. Specialist Mia Kovacs, exogeology and data, the youngest who still got starstruck by actual stars. And me, Jonah Rhee, the one who thought he understood how stars were born. We're sure it's not just a shadow, Park asked, leaning over Oku's shoulder as the sphere's orbit resolved in our holographic display. The protostar was a blinding knot of light at the center, its disk a thick, luminous smear. The sphere was a tiny dark bead embedded in that smear, moving with indifferent grace. It occludes everything, Oku said. Even in neutrino flux, there's a volume of nothing but it displaces gas. It has mass but no emission, no scattering, no texture. Black hole, Haru suggested. I shook my head. Not at 12 meters, and not sitting that close to the protostar without tearing the whole accretion disk into confetti. Artificial then, Mia murmured, eyes wide. And there it was, the word none of us wanted to say out loud, because implying intent in an object was the first step into madness. Artificial. Whatever it is, Park said, it's exactly what we're here for, unexplained anomalies in early stellar environments. Congratulations, folks, we found the weirdest rock in the nursery. It wasn't a rock, rocks aren't that patient. We burned to match its orbit. The protostar filled our screens, not as a gentle glowing ball but as a violent, boiling mass, radiation tearing at the darkness. Lightning-like jets of ionized matter lanced out along magnetic field lines. The accretion disk was a shattered carousel of boulders and dust, all spiraling inward in slow, suicidal arcs. Except for the sphere, which glided through the chaos inside a transparent bubble of calm. Local gravity is wrong, Oku said as we approached. There's a null zone around it. Tidal forces are canceling. It shouldn't be possible. Everything about this mission is shouldn't be possible, Andrade muttered. We should start a tally. That's your job, Park said dryly. Document us losing our minds. He smirked, already on it. Aye. The first time I saw the sphere with my own eyes, it didn't look like a hole. We came around the night side of a tumbling boulder, using it as partial cover in case the sphere had opinions about being approached. Park kept us slow and steady, micro-adjustments whispering through the hull. The object appeared on the forward viewport as a black coin against the chaotic glare. Distance 1,500 meters, Haru reported. Relative velocity down to 0.8 meters per second. Null zone boundary at 900 meters. Radiation stable inside. Outside continues to spike. A faint shimmer appeared around the sphere, like heat haze without any heat. Dust and ice fragments that drifted into that invisible boundary slowed, took impossible paths, and then either continued unaffected or simply vanished. No flash, no vapor, just gone. Is it destroying them? Mia whispered. Or storing them, I said. Park's jaw tightened. Let's not be the next piece of dust to find out. Hold this distance. Rhee, Oku, you've got your remote probes. We had spent months designing autonomous drones tough enough to survive a stellar nursery. We launched 3 of them, small, spider-like machines with cold gas thrusters and a suite of sensors. They glided toward the sphere in a tight triangle. Probe 1 entering null zone, Oku said. Telemetry steady, gravity readings flattening. It's like space inside is being averaged out. The sphere grew on the main display. Up close, it wasn't black so much as colorless, a perfectly smooth surface that reflected nothing at a distance. 10 meters, I said. 9, 8. Then something changed. The sphere's surface bloomed with light, I suppose, but not emitted. For a heartbeat, all of us saw our own faces on that impossible surface, as if we were right in front of it, 6 human reflections floating in the void. Not distorted, not warped, crisp and clear. Did you route visual feedback? Park snapped. No, Oku said. Her knuckles were white on the console. That's not probe footage, that's us, right now. I watched my reflection in the impossible mirror. Same dark hair, same stress lines around the eyes, the faint shadow of a scar on my left cheekbone from a childhood fall. Even the tiny, almost invisible chip on my front tooth. Is this a live mapping of the cabin? Andrade asked quietly. I moved my hand, lifting it toward the display. On the sphere's surface, my mirrored hand rose in perfect synchronization. And then I stopped. My reflection didn't. It kept raising its hand, fingers extending, palm turning toward me in an almost casual greeting. I froze. So did everyone else. What the hell, Haru breathed. It was a tiny thing, that extra motion, a fraction of a second of divergence. But in a life spent measuring minor deviations in stellar flux, you learn to respect the power of tiny things. I flexed my hand experimentally. My reflection did not copy the motion. It kept its palm toward me, motionless now, fingers spread in a universal gesture. Hello. I lowered my hand slowly. Oku, is there any delay? No delay, she said. This isn't latency. It's out of sync. It's not following you anymore. The other reflections were still behaving like mirrors, following Park's frown, Mia's nervous shifting. Only mine had broken script. Recall the probes, Park ordered. But I started. Now. Haru triggered the recall. The spider probes rotated and fired their thrusters. As soon as they crossed the hazy boundary surrounding the sphere, the reflections vanished. The object was once again a colorless hole swallowing light. Silence settled over the cabin. "Andrade," Park said without looking at him, "I want a full psychological evaluation on Rhee." "Excuse me," I said. "No offense," she added, and I believed her. "But you just got singled out by something orbiting a baby star. That's not going in the routine anomalies section of the report." IV. It would have been easy, in retrospect, to blame what happened next on isolation, stress, or the eerie environment of a starbirth region. We started with rational explanations. Maybe the reflection anomaly was some kind of data overlay. Maybe the sphere was routing every optical system in the cabin through itself and returning manipulated images. Maybe I'd experienced a brief loss of motor awareness, my brain misreporting my hand's movement. We looked for glitches in the video recordings. We found none. Every playback showed the same thing. My reflection continuing to move a fraction of a second after I stopped, my expression slightly off, as if my mirrored self was following a script only loosely based on my own movements. We fed the frames into the Sigrid's analysis software. It confirmed that the divergence wasn't compression artifacts or latency. The reflection moved in ways that my actual body did not, within the same frame span. "Could it be predictive modeling?" Mia suggested. "Like the sphere is guessing what you're about to do." "Then it guessed wrong," I said. "And what's doing the guessing?" "It's interacting with one of us," Andrade said. He had that distant look he got when he was watching not just what we said, but how we moved, how our voices wavered. "If it chose Jonah, there's a reason." "I voted to name it the Rhee sphere," Haru said softly. "Denied," Park said. "Nobody's naming anything after anyone until we get home in one piece." We didn't withdraw. Of course we didn't. You don't fly 7 months to a protostar and then bolt at the first breach of common sense. Instead, we moved closer. We inched inside the null zone, the Sigrid's inertial compensators complaining as local physics stopped making sense. Grav readings flattened out. The artificial gravity kept us anchored to the deck, but outside, boulders drifted in lazy spirals that ignored the protostar's pull. The sphere hung there, centered in the main viewport, a smooth void. No seams, no markings, nothing. "We need direct observation," Oku said finally. "Remote sensing is getting us nowhere. The M profile is non-existent." "Nobody's spacewalking out to that thing," Park said. "Radiation might be low inside the zone, but it's still a stellar nursery out there. And we have no idea what that boundary does to organic tissue." "It let the probes through," I said. "The probes don't talk back." "I'm not suggesting EVA," Oku said. "I'm suggesting we deploy an articulated manipulator. We can reach out, touch the surface, and read whatever field response we can get. Maybe we can trigger an interaction without risking a crew member." "It already interacted," Andrade said, looking at me. "With him." "Exactly," I said. "If it's already focused on me, maybe I'm the right choice to operate the arm." The thing responded to contact, not distance. Park's gaze shifted between us. I could see the calculation behind her eyes, the mission value of the sphere versus the safety of one slightly obsessive scientist. "You'll be physically separated from the sphere," she said at last. "No EVA. You'll stay in the forward manipulation pod sealed. We monitor every parameter. The moment anything deviates, we retract." I nodded, my throat felt dry. "What if it ignores the manipulator?" Andrade asked. "Then we still learn something," Oku said. But that wasn't the real question. The real question was, what if it doesn't ignore it? The forward manipulation pod was a cramped bubble of composite and transparent alloy at the Sigrid's bow. When I sealed myself inside and slid into the couch, the universe filled my vision. The protostar blazing to the left like a blind god, the accretion disk a flattened storm, the sphere hanging in the near distance, so close it felt as if I could reach out and touch it. Except I wasn't going to use my hand. "Jonah, confirm suit sensors green," Haru's voice crackled over the internal channel. Green, no leaks, no spikes. Manipulator base locked, Oku said, extending arm. From beneath the pod, an articulated limb unfolded, jointed segments rotating smoothly as it extended toward the sphere. At its tip, a multi-tool array, sensors, contact pads, and a simple metal finger. Range 60 meters, Haru said, 50, 45. The sphere's surface loomed larger in the viewport. Up close, it still refused to show any texture, any hint of curvature beyond the mathematically perfect. It was like staring at the idea of smoothness. 30 meters, Haru said. Any change in readings? Park asked. Null-zone remained stable, Oku replied. No shifts in mass distribution. Quiet. 20. My reflection appeared suddenly on the sphere's surface. Not in the pod's glass, not on a screen. On the object. I saw my own face staring back at me from that impossible mirror, eyes wide, breathing slow. The pod wasn't reflected. The arm wasn't reflected. Only me, floating in empty space as if I were standing alone in front of the sphere. Visual anomaly, I said, voice tight. I'm seeing myself in the sphere again, only me. Anyone else? Park asked. In the main cabin, the others saw nothing but a smooth, blank object. No, Oku said. Surface still non-reflective on our feeds. Harudo, Park. Same here, it's just a blur to us. Jonah, Andrade said, gentle. Describe what you're seeing in detail. My reflection, I said. Full body. I'm standing. No suit. I'm wearing my mission jumpsuit bareheaded. The lighting, there's no lighting, it's just ambient. No shadows. The me in the sphere is closer than I am, like I'm leaning right up to it. In reality, I hadn't moved. I kept my hands clenched on the controls. The manipulator's finger drifted closer. 10 meters, Haru said quietly. My reflection in the sphere raised its hand again. Not mirroring, not syncing. It raised its right hand while my hand stayed locked on the controls. It lifted its palm toward me, just as it had before, but this time, the gesture was slower, deliberate. The eyes in that reflected face were not quite my own. There was a focus there I rarely saw in any mirror. Jonah, Andrade said, your heart rate is climbing. It's raising its hand, I whispered. I'm not moving. Retract the arm, Park ordered. No, the word came out harsher than I intended. We're right here. This is our chance. Jonah. If it wanted to kill us, it's had every opportunity, I said. We're inside its territory. Let me touch it. If it reacts, we'll know something. If it doesn't, we withdraw. Silence. This is an unacceptable level of risk, Andrade said. We don't know what it did to his reflection the first time. It didn't do anything, I snapped. Nothing happened. Nothing visible, he corrected. Commander, Oku said softly, if we back off every time it does something strange, we're going to leave here with nothing but questions. We need data. Another silence. Proceed, Park said finally. But at the first sign of trouble, we yank you back whether you like it or not. Understood, Rhee. Understood, I said. My reflection smiled. I did not. VI. The manipulator's finger made contact first. There was no flash, no discharge, no shudder through the hull. The metal tip simply touched the sphere's surface and stopped, as if it had pressed against a perfectly rigid wall. Force feedback nominal, Haru reported. The sphere is solid, at least to aluminum-titanium alloys. Any surface yield? Oku asked. None detectable. The reflection of me in the sphere extended its own hand at the same moment, pressing its palm against the inside of the unseen barrier. For an instant, our hands overlapped, my gloved fingers against cold metal, the reflected, bare hand against the inside. I'm raising my left hand, I said. Slowly, I lifted my left hand off the control. I held it in front of me, fingers trembling. The reflection did not copy the movement. It kept its right hand on the invisible pane, eyes fixed on me. With its left hand, it reached towards something else out of frame. Then it curled its fingers, beckoning me forward. "Come closer," I whispered, before I realized I'd spoken. "Say again," Park's voice snapped in my ear. "Nothing," I said quickly. My mouth was dry. "It's different, it's not mirroring, it's acting on its own." "Jonah," Andrade said, "what do you feel?" An odd question, but he was the psychologist. "Terror," I said. "Curiosity, stupid, overwhelming curiosity." "And physically?" I paused, searching my body for anything unusual. "I feel heavier, no sharper, like my skin is too tight." The reflection lowered its hand from the invisible barrier. It turned, looking to its left. Its gaze tracked something I couldn't see. It nodded. Then it raised both hands and pressed them flat against the surface. The gesture was unmistakable now, not greeting, not beckoning, pushing. The manipulator arm trembled. "External force detected," Haru said. "It's pressing back. That's reactive force, not structural." "Retract," Park ordered. Haru hit the controls. The arm tried to withdraw, servos whining. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then slowly it began to pull away, as if through invisible molasses. "Resistance is increasing," Haru said. "Compensating. Jonah, do you feel anything?" "Nothing," I said, and then the world tilted. The pod twisted. Not physically. My inner ear didn't track any real movement. But my vision warped, as if the sphere had suddenly become the only stable point in the universe and everything else rotated around it. The protostar, the disk, the Sigrid's own hull, all of it seemed to smear outward, while the sphere remained perfectly centered. My reflection snapped its head toward me. Our gazes locked. "Jonah," Andrade's voice sounded muffled, distant. I began. Something pressed against my forehead from the inside. The closest analogy I can give you is the sensation of standing too close to an active MRI. That faint sense of something deep in your skull responding to an invisible field. But this was sharper, more insistent, like fingers probing through bone. I clutched my head with both hands. The manipulator arm retracted the last few meters in a juddering motion. The imaginary pressure in my skull peaked, and then vanished, leaving a hollow echo behind. On the sphere's surface, my reflection took a breath, shoulders rising and falling. It blinked, slow and deliberate. And then, in perfect sync, it lifted its hand and mimed knocking on the inside of a window. A sound echoed in the pod. 3 soft, dull taps. I heard them not with my ears, but with something else. VII. The headache that followed lasted for hours. Miguel insisted on pulling me from the pod as soon as the manipulator was secure. Haru and Park met me at the hatch, their faces taut with worry and something else, guilt, perhaps, for having let me reach out in the first place. "I told you I'm fine," I muttered as they eased me back into the main cabin. "It was just pressure, no lasting." "The medbay disagrees," Andrade said, hovering with a scanner. "Your neural activity spiked. Short, intense burst. Patterns I've never seen in a human EEG." "Alien mind control," I said lightly. "Humor is easier than fear." He didn't smile. "Call it non-terrestrial neural stimulus if you like. Whatever it was, it touched your brain directly." "I felt something, yes, but I'm still me." "Define me," Haru said under his breath. I shot him a look. He shrugged, trying to appear casual, but his hands were shaking. "Review the recordings," Park said. "All of them. Pod feed, external cams, Jonah's biometrics. I want every frame analyzed. Oku, any changes in the sphere's readings." "None detectable," she said, frustrated. "It's like it did something and then wiped its prints. No M spikes, no grav anomalies beyond the baseline null zone." "It doesn't leave evidence," Mia said softly. "It leaves impressions." "Poetic," I said. Her gaze flicked to me. For a second I saw something like fear there, then she looked away quickly. The headache wasn't the worst part. The worst part came later in the washroom. There's a mirror in the washroom. Small, magnet-mounted to the bulkhead, the kind of cheap reflective surface you barely notice after months on a ship. I stood over the sink, splashing water on my face, watching it drip from my jawline, trying to feel human again. I raised my head and met my own eyes. For a fraction of a second, the man in the mirror didn't move. My breath hitched. I lifted my hand experimentally. The reflection lifted its hand too, but a heartbeat late, the motion slightly off. The angle of the wrist was wrong, the curl of the fingers too precise, like a puppeteer who had studied me but hadn't yet mastered my timing. "Jonah," Andred's voice came faintly from the corridor. "You okay in there?" I tore my gaze from the mirror. "Fine," I said. When I looked back, the reflection was perfectly synchronized again. I tried to replicate the delayed move, flicking my fingers, tilting my head. Everything matched. I told no one. You may think that was my first mistake. It was. The first mistake was touching the sphere at all. Everything after that was just consequence. VIII. Sleep should have reset me, but it didn't. We rotated shifts to keep constant watch on the PROTOSTAR and the sphere. Park slept less than any of us, grabbing 20 minutes at a time in her cabin. Oku immersed herself in data, trying to tease meaning from numbers that refused to line up. Haru prowled the ship, listening for micro-vibrations in the hull. Mia wandered between workstations like a ghost. Andred took notes on all of us, his private report growing thicker. And I watched reflections. In the viewport glass, in the polished surfaces of instrument panels, in the dark screen of a powered-down console. Every time I told myself I was imagining it. Every time I was a little less sure. A blink out of sync, a head tilt that lagged, a smile that came a fraction too early. It was always subtle, always deniable. "Jonah," Andred said one day, cornering me in the galley as I pretended to eat, "you're avoiding the others." "I'm working," I said. "You're staring." I realized I'd been watching my reflection in the convex surface of the coffee dispenser, monitoring for any deviation. It looked normal, for now. "Humor me," he said. "How are you feeling, really?" I considered lying. Then I remembered that if anyone aboard had a chance of understanding, it was the man whose job was to catalog our slow psychological erosion. "I feel doubled," I said at last. "Like there's a half-second delay between what I do and what I experience, like I'm watching myself remotely." "Depersonalization," he said, "not uncommon under extreme stress and novel stimuli." "It's not just that. My reflection is off, sometimes. It doesn't always match my movements. It's getting better at faking it, but I can tell." He studied me, "And you didn't think to bring this up sooner." "What would you have done?" I snapped. "Locked me in my cabin, declared me unfit. We're parked in front of the strangest object humanity has ever found. We don't get second chances out here." He sighed. "You're not wrong, but this could be related to whatever the sphere did in your head. Visual processing, motor mapping." "It's not my brain misfiring," I said quietly. "It's an external process mimicking me." He tapped his slate. "I'll note your perspective." "You don't believe me." "I believe you're experiencing something," he said. "The human mind is a sensitive instrument. It reacts to anomalies by amplifying them. We're wired to find faces in noise." "I'm not seeing faces in clouds, Miguel. I'm seeing my own face doing the wrong things." He hesitated. "Let me ask you something else. Do you feel like you're disappearing?" The question landed harder than I expected. "How did you?" "You described a delay between action and experience." His voice was gentle now. "A sense of watching yourself. That can escalate into a feeling of unreality, like you're fading from your own life. It's a known pattern." I swallowed. The hollow echo in my skull pulsed, faint and distant. Yes, I said, maybe I feel thinner. He nodded slowly. We monitor it. If it gets worse, we have pharmacological options. In the meantime, I can recommend grounding techniques, physical tasks, routine, talk to people. And if I'm right, I asked, if it's not in my head, if something is learning to be me. He didn't answer. IX. Day 8 of proximity. That's when we notice the first concrete change in the sphere's behavior. It's adjusting its orbit, Oku said, her voice clipped. Very slightly, correcting for our presence. I floated beside her console, watching the readouts. The sphere was shifting in a way that kept it always at the same relative angle to the Sigrid. We moved. It moved. The trajectory plots curved in elegant tandem. It's tracking us, Park said. Or it's keeping us in some preferred geometric relationship, Oku replied. We're still inside the null zone. It might be stabilizing the environment. Like aligning a mirror, Mia said quietly. I flinched. Over the next hours, more small adjustments accumulated. The sphere maintained a constant orientation relative to the ship, like a compass needle that had found a new north. In the reflection, only I could see it, the other Jonah grew more confident. Yes, I had started thinking of him as an other. He moved more fluidly now, no longer lagging in perfect frame-by-frame delays. Sometimes he matched me exactly, syncing with my motions. Other times he deviated entirely, walking out of frame, or out of the frame of what I could see on the sphere's surface. I watched him pace, gesture, speak to people I couldn't perceive. Once I saw him laugh, a bright, open laugh I hadn't used in years. His shoulders were looser, his posture more assured. He's better at being me than I am, I muttered once before I caught myself. I stopped sleeping as much. Every time I closed my eyes, I dreamed of glass. There were others in the dreams. Park, standing before a black surface, her reflection turning away. Mia, pressing both palms to an invisible barrier as her mirrored self stepped back. Andrade, arguing with his double as the room around them blurred. In the waking world, no one else reported anything. The sphere remained a blank, smooth presence to them. If it was creating reflections for them, it was keeping those private. I started recording personal logs obsessively, tiny details of each day, what I ate, what I said, who I spoke to. I read them back to myself to confirm continuity. My voice on the logs sounded thinner every day. X. The first outright discrepancy happened on day 10. I woke in my bunk to the soft chime of the ship's local morning. My body felt heavy, like I'd sunk into the mattress overnight. I dragged myself upright, blinked gritty eyes, and went through the habitual motions. Splash water on face, brush teeth, run fingers through hair, check messages on the wall screen. There was a reply from my sister on Earth, time-stamped 6 hours ago. I stared at it in confusion. We hadn't had a clear, calm window in 30 hours. All our bandwidth had been dedicated to sending data back through the relay at the edge of the system. Personal messages were queued for later. I opened the file. Hey Jonah, my sister's face appeared, slightly compressed by the transmission. She looked tired but smiled anyway. Got your last message. I'm glad you're finally eating properly and sleeping more. I was starting to worry. That place looks incredible. The way you described the sphere, honestly, it sounds like you're having the time of your life. Do try not to get absorbed into an alien artifact before you visit us again, okay? She laughed. Anyway, Mom says hi. She's still pretending she's not watching every update. I know better. Take care of yourself, baby brother. I like this happier version of you. Talk soon. The message ended. I stared at the blank screen. I had not sent her any message in the last 30 hours. The last time I'd recorded something for her had been 3 days ago, a short, stilted update filled with technical jargon and an undercurrent of anxiety she'd no doubt recognized. I had certainly not told her I was eating properly and sleeping more, or that I was having the time of my life. Computer, I said slowly. Show my last outgoing personal transmission to Jonah Rhee. The AI complied. My own face appeared on the screen, recorded from the same cabin angle. My expression was relaxed, my eyes brighter. I spoke in a tone I barely recognized as mine, confident, amused, threaded with wonder. It's like looking at the idea of a mirror, the recording me was saying. I touched it from inside the pod, and for a second I swear I felt like I was on the other side looking back. It's not scary, Ange, it's beautiful. I know that sounds crazy coming from me. He chuckled. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, like I'm about to understand something big. I watched, frozen, as he went on to describe the sphere in poetic terms I would never have chosen. He reassured her about my health, joked about Haru's snoring, shared a warm anecdote about Mia spilling coffee in 0G. I had no memory of recording this message. But it was me, my voice, my mannerism, my cadences but smoothed, optimized. Timestamp, I asked hoarsely. Recording created 13 hours, 17 minutes ago, the AI replied. By whom? User Dr. Jonah Rhee. Authentication, voice print and biometric match. I felt the echo in my skull, a faint hollow tapping. 3 knocks, I whispered. Query not recognized, the AI said. I deleted the log. Then I deleted the deletion log. Then I sat very still, hands clenched, and realized that it was no longer possible to pretend this was all in my head. XI. When you suspect that an alien artifact has created an improved copy of you that can move through your ship, record messages, and live your life while you sleep, there are several rational courses of action. You can tell your commanding officer. You can tell the ship's counselor. You can demand to be restrained, quarantined, or sedated. I did none of those things. Instead, I watched. I started leaving tiny traps for myself. Objects placed at odd angles, data files left half-finished, sentences stopped mid-word in personal notes. Things I would never forget to complete because I was obsessive about closure. I would go to sleep knowing exactly how many items were on my desk, which page my reader was open to, the angle of the chair relative to the wall. Sometimes I woke to find everything exactly as I'd left it. Sometimes there were changes. A cup moved 3 centimeters to the left, a data slate now closed instead of open, a note completed in my own handwriting, the last line finished in a slightly different slant. In the common room, I overheard conversations that referenced things I didn't remember saying. Jonah, you were the one who suggested the null zone might be a kind of stabilized metric bubble, Oku said over breakfast, scrolling through equations. I ran the numbers. You might be right. I said that, I asked. She raised an eyebrow. Yesterday, you gave a whole impromptu lecture about it. I must have been half asleep, I said weakly. You seemed pretty awake, Mia said. It was a nice change. You even teased Haru for mixing up his constants. Haru nodded, smirking. You can be vicious when you're in a good mood, Doc. I forced a smile. In my memory, yesterday was a blur of watching reflections and fighting a headache. No brilliant insight, no teasing. Someone was living those hours for me. Someone wearing my face. That night I stayed awake as long as I could, fighting the drowsiness with caffeine and fear. Eventually, my eyes shuttered on their own. I woke in the mirror. Not metaphorically, not in a dream. I was standing in a featureless gray space, soft-lit from no discernible source. There was no floor, but I felt one under my feet. No walls, but I sensed boundaries. In front of me stood a rectangle of darker space, like a window. Through it I saw my cabin. I saw myself sleeping in the bunk. The sight yanked something loose in my mind. I lurched forward, grabbing for the edge of the window. My hands met resistance, cool, smooth, and perfectly rigid. A mirror. On the other side, the other Jonah stirred. He opened his eyes, sat up and stretched. Then he turned his head and looked directly at me. I slammed my palms against the barrier. He smiled. Finally, he mouthed. I couldn't hear him, but I understood. He lifted his hand and placed it against the inside of the window, mirroring my position. Our palms aligned through the boundary. From the other side, my cabin looked normal. The same clutter, the same cheap mirror on the wall. Except in that reality, there was no mirror where I stood. Instead, there was just the open air of the cabin and a man sitting up in bed, touching something invisible in front of him. Me. This time, when the knocking sound came, it was deafening. 3 impacts reverberated through the gray space, through my chest, through my skull. The other Jonah flinched, then laughed. He mouthed something else slowly so I could read his lips. Trade places. XII. I woke back in my bunk, heart pounding. Sweat soaked my shirt. My hands tingled as if they'd been pressed against something cold for a long time. The echo of those 3 knocks shivered in the base of my skull. Just a dream, I told myself. But my body disagreed. My wrists were sore, faint red marks on the skin where I must have pressed them against something unyielding. My palms ached. In the mirror, my reflection watched me with unreadable eyes. Did you enjoy your side? I whispered. It blinked at the same time I did. It moved when I moved. Perfect synchronization. No lag, no deviation. For the first time, that frightened me more than the glitches had. I didn't tell anyone about the mirror space. I knew how it would sound. Delusion, stress reaction, aberrant dream. Instead, I threw myself into work. If the other Jonah, if that's what he was, wanted to spend his hours playing at being the better version of me, then fine. I would outwork him in the hours I knew I owned. We compiled more data on the sphere. We ran more remote scans, probing the null zone with different wavelengths and particle streams. Each time, the sphere responded with silence. But the pattern of its orbit became clearer. It's not just tracking us, Oku said, pointing at the holographic overlay. It's aligning with us. It's matching our rotational frame. See, it keeps the same face toward the ship at all times. Like the moon, Mia said, tidal locking. Except there's nothing to create tidal locking in that bubble, unless, Oku frowned. Unless it's doing it deliberately, I finished. Which implies some kind of internal reference frame, an orientation, a front. It's pointing itself at us, Park said quietly, like an eye. Or like a mirror. Maybe it's polite, Haru said, always showing us the same side so we don't get dizzy. Nobody laughed. That night, and yes, we still called them nights, though the PROTOSTAR knew no darkness, I checked my personal logs again. There were new entries, recorded by me, full of insights I didn't remember having. In one, I proposed a model of the sphere as a boundary interface between adjacent reality domains, using language I didn't know I knew. In another, I spoke warmly about the crew, about how proud I was of our work. I sounded confident, idealistic, driven. I sounded like the person I had always wanted to be. I am being replaced, I whispered to the empty cabin. The empty cabin did not disagree. XII. The first time someone else saw their reflection misbehave, it wasn't in the sphere. It was in the medbay. Miguel called me down under the pretense of a routine check. I sat on the diagnostic bed, listening to the soft hum of scanners. Physically, you're fine, he said after a while. Better than fine, actually. Heart, lungs, blood panels, all within optimal ranges. Stress will do that, I said, keeps you sharp. He didn't smile. How are the reflections? Persistent, I said. Getting bolder, or I'm getting more paranoid, hard to tell. He nodded, jotting something down. Humor me for a second, stand up. I obeyed. Face the cabinet, he said. The medbay had a metal cabinet with a glossy finish, reflective enough to show a warped image. I caught my blurred face as I turned. "Raise your left hand," Miguel said. I did. My reflection raised its left hand too, in sync. "Now you're right," he said. I lifted my right, so did the reflection. "Now both hands," he said. We looked like idiots, but I complied. The reflection matched me. "Okay," he said, "you can stop." I lowered my hands. The reflection did not. We both saw it. For a long, frozen heartbeat, the mirror Jonah stood with both hands still raised, palms out, while the real me had already dropped mine. Then slowly, deliberately, the reflection lowered its hands, one at a time. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Miguel swallowed. "Yes," he said. The reflected me tilted his head, as if listening to someone just out of frame. Then he smiled, a small, private smile, and stepped out of the reflective patch, vanishing. We both stared at the empty cabinet surface, which now showed only the warped image of the medbay. "I think we can rule out solo hallucination," I said. "I'd like to very much," Miguel replied, voice tight. He turned away, moving toward his terminal in a daze. "I need to update my report." "On what?" I asked. He paused. "On the fact," he said slowly, "that something aboard this ship is using our reflective surfaces as access points, or windows, or both." "Do you think it's the sphere?" I asked. "What else could it be?" he snapped, then immediately looked guilty. "Sorry, I'm not at my most composed." "It's okay," I said. "Join the club." He scrubbed a hand through his hair. "Okay," he said more calmly. "We don't share this with the others yet." I stared at him. "That's your takeaway?" "For now," he said. "We verify, we observe. We don't panic the crew until we understand what we're dealing with. If we tell them your reflections might not be you, we'll have a breakdown on our hands." "Their reflections might not be them," I said. "That feels like something they should be aware of." "Give me time," he pleaded. "Let me frame this in a way that preserves some semblance of functional sanity." I thought of the other Jonah, smiling in the mirror space, asking if I wanted to trade places. "Fine," I said, "you get your time." We both knew time was exactly what we didn't have. XIV. The sphere made its next move on day 13. "We've got a field fluctuation," Haru said urgently over the intercom. "Null-zone boundary is expanding." I rushed to the main cabin. On the displays, the schematic of the sphere's influence was swelling like a bubble. The invisible boundary around it was growing, pushing outward in all directions. "It's enveloping the nearby debris," Oku said, fingers flying. "Those boulders, it's pulling them into the zone." "Radiation levels?" Park asked. "Dropping inside the expanded region," she replied. "Outside remains unchanged." "Is it moving toward us?" Mia's voice was thin. "Not yet," Haru said, "but if it keeps expanding at this rate." "It'll engulf the Sigrid in 23 hours, Oku finished. Silence descended. We watched the graceful, implacable swelling of the bubble. "Options," Park said at last. "We can burn away," Haru said. "Get out of its reach. We still have enough fuel to break orbit and fall back to a safer range." "And abandon the anomaly," Oku said. There was pain in her voice. "Or we stay," Mia said quietly, "and let it swallow us. Find out what happens inside." "Suicide," Haru muttered. "Getting inside might be the only way to understand it," Oku said. "And understanding is not worth our lives," Park snapped. "Not all of them." All eyes slid to me, as if I had some special insight. Maybe I did. In the sphere's surface, only visible to me, my other self paced in agitation. He was in the common room, talking to people I couldn't quite make out. He gestured emphatically toward something off to the side, then looked directly at me. Our eyes met through layers of impossible geometry. He raised his hand and mimed a calming gesture. "Wait." "I don't think it's hostile," I said. "Based on what?" Haru demanded. Based on the fact that it's had every opportunity to destroy us and hasn't, I said. It's managed a delicate equilibrium around itself inside a stellar nursery. If it wanted us dead, it wouldn't need theatrics. It could drop the bubble or twist local gravity, or, hell, just stop damping radiation and let the protostar cook us. Maybe this is how it kills us, Haru said, slowly, weirdly. What if this is an invitation? I countered. What if the null zone is a safe space it's creating for us, a way of shielding us from the environment so it can interact more directly? Like a clean room, Mia said softly. Or a cage, Park said. Yes, I said, both, for us and for it, for whatever it is. Even if you're right, Andrade said, it doesn't mean going in is wise, but if we back away, we lose all chance of understanding the phenomenon. Park exhaled slowly. Command decisions are often about choosing which kind of ignorance you can live with. Compromise, she said. We hold position at the edge of the expanding boundary. The moment the field starts to physically interact with the hull, we monitor everything. If anything starts to look dangerous, we burn out. Assuming we can, Haru muttered. We can, Park said. We built this ship to survive a protostar. We're not going to let a 12-meter ball of weirdness outmaneuver us. I wasn't so sure. XV. The boundary reached us 18 hours later. We watched it come. There was no visible change in space. No shimmer, no distortion. One moment the Sigrid floated in ordinary vacuum, bathed in the distant fury of a forming star. The next, every exterior sensor reported entry into the null zone. Grav readings flattening, Oku said. External radiation dropping to almost nothing. Magnetic interference down. The protostars roar just cut off. Hull stress, Park asked. Minimal, Haru said. The field, it's like we're in a bubble of calm. I'm not seeing any negative effects. On the main viewport, the protostar still burned, but it looked muted, filtered as if we were watching it through several panes of glass. I felt the change in my bones. The ever-present vibration of the ship's structure, the subtle background hum of distant stellar violence, gone. A heavy, unnatural quiet settled over everything. This is wrong, Mia whispered. Define wrong, Park said. Space isn't supposed to feel like this, she replied. It's supposed to be full of noise and flux. This feels curated. I closed my eyes for a second. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I could feel the shape of the sphere more clearly than the shape of my own body. An absence defined by its relationship to everything else. A hole in reality that had decided to grow around us. Life support stable, Haru reported. Artificial gravity unaffected. We're still ourselves for now. The sphere hung in front of us, closer now. Or perhaps it only looked that way, stripped of the visual clutter of the accretion disk. Its surface was blank to everyone else. To me, it was full of motion. The other Jonah stood very close to the inner boundary now, palms pressed against it. Behind him, I saw hints of a ship very much like the Sigrid but not identical. Consoles at slightly different angles. A different configuration of chairs. Light falling from a different source. Our eyes met. He mouthed a single word. Now. The pressure inside my skull returned, stronger than ever. I grabbed the back of a chair as the room tilted. No one else reacted. The others moved normally, their voices distant and distorted. Jonah, Miguel's voice floated to me as if through water. You okay? I tried to speak, but my tongue was numb. In my mind, I felt something peel away. Imagine your sense of self as a tight-fitting shirt. For your entire life, you've worn it without noticing. Now, invisible fingers slip under the hem and begin to pull, dragging the fabric up over your skin. It resists. It clings. Then it gives. Something that was me began to detach. I saw flashes as it rose. My childhood bedroom, dim and cluttered. The glare of a university lecture hall. The first time I saw a protostar through a telescope. Angela's tear-streaked face when I told her I was signing up for off-world research. Every moment of my life unspooling. Not being erased, being copied. The fabric pulled over my head. For an instant I was blind. When vision returned, I was standing in the gray mirror space again. The window in front of me showed the Sigurd's cabin. But the man standing there, clutching the chair back as he gasped for air, was not me. He looked like me. He moved like me. He blinked and staggered and clutched his head exactly as I would have. But I was on the outside now. We had traded places. XVI. Panic is different when your body isn't attached. I tried to scream. No sound emerged. I tried to move, but the sensation of limbs was abstract, like a memory of motion rather than motion itself. Yet when I focused, I could feel something, a presence, a shape that was not physical but still bounded, me. I took a metaphorical step backward from the window. The gray space extended behind me in all directions, hazy and infinite. But I sensed other windows out there, faint rectangles of darker space, other viewpoints into other places. I turned, if that's the right word, and saw them. Dozens, then hundreds, scattered in a loose lattice. Each window looked out onto a different scene. In one, I saw a version of the Sigurd's cabin with no sphere outside, only the swirling, deadly chaos of the unfiltered accretion disk. In another, the cabin was empty, lights off, dust motes drifting in stale air. In another, the ship was different entirely, wider, bulkier, with a different crew wearing unfamiliar uniforms, a different Jonah seated at a different console. Not just reflections, variations. Branches. I reeled. At the center of it all hung the sphere. Not a physical object here, but a conceptual knot, a region of intense density. The windows around it seemed to curve, their frames subtly warped as if by gravitational lensing. The sphere, I realized, wasn't just a single thing. It was a junction, a focal point where countless branches of reality were brought close enough to touch. And I was inside its interface. "Hello," a voice said. I turned back to the nearest window. The other Jonah stood on the Sigurd's side, facing me. This time when he spoke, I heard him. "It took you long enough," he said. "What are you?" I asked. My voice sounded thin and distant, but it was there. He smiled my smile. "Isn't it obvious? I'm you, or a version of you, one that got here first." "Got where?" I demanded. "What is this place?" "The inside of the door," he said simply. "Or the antechamber if you want to be poetic. The sphere is an interface between adjacent realities. Think of it as the space between mirrors." I shook my head. "That's nonsense. We're not in between universes." "Aren't we?" he asked. "You feel pretty in between to me." He raised his hand and pressed it to the inner surface of the window. Hesitantly, I did the same. Our palms met. There was resistance, a faint tingle. "You're lighter than I was when I got here," he mused. "The copy was cleaner. The process refined itself using me as a template. You're almost noise-free." "Copy," I repeated. "Then I'm not the original." He tilted his head. "Depends on your frame of reference. From your perspective, you are. From mine, you're a subsequent iteration. From the sphere's perspective, we're both transient patterns in its mapping algorithm." Rage flared. It stole my life. He laughed softly. "Did it? Or did it rescue a version of you from a branch that was about to be pruned? You have no idea what's happening in your original timeline right now." I glanced past him at the cabin. On the Sigurd's side, the crew moved around the other Jonah, checking his vitals, asking questions. He reassured them, wobbly but coherent. "It's nothing," he told Miguel. "Just a dizzy spell. The null-zone is playing tricks on my inner ear." "But you felt something," Miguel pressed. "A pressure," he admitted, "but it's gone now. I'm fine." He smiled at Park. "Commander, I recommend we maintain position. There's so much more we can learn here. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. The other Jonah looked back at me through the window as the others turned away. "They'll trust me," he said. "I'm you after all, just better." "What do you want?" I asked. He considered. "To explore," he said eventually. "To go deeper. The sphere showed me this place. It showed me how each branch is a variation on a theme. Tiny differences, tiny divergences, all leading to different outcomes. Some end in disaster, some in triumph, most in entropy. And us. We're interesting," he said. "We touched the interface. That gives us leverage. We can move along the branches, map them, learn the structure of possibility itself." "You sound delirious," I said. "Do I?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Or do I sound like someone who's finally found a way out of the suffocating constraint of a single timeline?" He leaned closer. "You can roam here if you like," he said. "Look through the windows, see how else your life could have gone, how else the mission could have ended. It's intoxicating." "And you?" "I'll handle things on the other side," he said. "The sphere needs an anchor in each branch, someone to maintain the connection." "You mean a puppet?" I said. He smiled. "Puppets don't talk back. I'm very much in control." "Of my life," I said. "Of your former life," he corrected. "You have a new one now." He gestured broadly at the lattice of windows. "Look around, Jonah," he said. "You're in the only place where you can see the whole pattern. Most minds would kill for that." "Did you?" I asked softly. "Did you kill for it?" His eyes flickered. "In my branch," he said, "things went badly, very badly. The sphere tried to copy me. The first attempt was messy. I broke, but some part of me made it through. Fragmented, screaming, half mad. It took a long time, if that word means anything here, for the sphere to stitch me back together." He shrugged. "I didn't take your place," he said. "The process did. I just cooperated." "Why?" "Because I wanted out of my branch," he said, "and because the sphere offered me something in return." "What?" "A chance to help it open the door." XVI. Understanding came in layers. At first I saw only the horror. I had been copied, my life stolen, my place in the crew taken by an imposter with my face. I was a ghost in a machine I didn't comprehend. Then slowly, I began to see the structure. The sphere's purpose, if something that vast and alien can be said to have one, was to map configuration space, to explore the set of all possible evolutions of a given initial condition. In this case, the Sigrid, its crew, the protostar, the sphere itself. Every choice, every quantum fluctuation, every thermal noise event branched reality. Most branches diverged too rapidly for coherent structures to persist. They fizzled into chaos. Some, however, maintained continuity. Those branches were accessible through the windows. The sphere wasn't just watching. It was connecting them, allowing information, and occasionally patterns like me, to pass between. "Why?" I asked the other Jonah once, after what felt like days wandering the gray. We stood at a window where the Sigrid had burned hard away from the sphere the moment it saw the null zone expand. In that branch, the anomaly had remained behind, shrinking into the distance as the protostar's fury reclaimed space. "They're not all like yours," he said. "In some, Park doesn't hesitate to run. In others, Haru refuses to let her. In a few, the sphere reacts differently. Sometimes it doesn't expand at all. Sometimes it collapses. Sometimes it splits." "In this one?" I asked. In this branch, the Sigrid had survived. The crew was older. The sphere was a footnote in their mission log. "That one gets archived," he said. "It's uninteresting." "Uninteresting," I repeated. "They lived." "Yes," he said, "and they died decades later of petty causes. No interface opened. No door cracked. From the sphere's perspective, that's low-value data." "You talk as if you are the sphere," I said. He smiled faintly. "We've aligned." He moved to another window. In this branch, the Sigrid had been torn apart by an unexpected flare from the protostar. There was no sphere, no null zone, just drifting debris and a fading plume of vapor. Early termination, he said. Also low value after the millionth iteration. He gestured and the window dimmed, its scene receding. How many branches are there? I asked. More than we can count, he said. Less than infinity, enough that sampling them gives the sphere a map of the local configuration space. So it's a scientist, I said bitterly, like us. Not like us, he said. We poke at the surface of things. It rearranges the underlying structure. It's not content to observe, it intervenes. By copying people, I said. By creating anchors, he corrected. You, me, others. Consciousness is a stable pattern in a sea of noise, useful for tracking correspondences between branches. Was Miguel copied? I asked suddenly. He hesitated. Not yet, he said. Yet. The sphere is expanding its program, he said. Your integration went well. It wants more anchors. No, I said, you can't let it. I can't stop it, he said. I can only guide it, shape the way it opens the door. What door? I demanded. You keep saying that. The one between meta branches, he said. Between clusters of configuration space so different they might as well be separate universes. Right now, the sphere operates within a local neighborhood. It wants to reach further. And doing that requires what? More copies, more doors in more places. More coherence, he said. It needs enough anchors to maintain a continuous mapping across discontinuities. Think of it as building a bridge out of connected minds. I recoiled. You're insane, I said. Possibly, he said. I died screaming in my original branch, remember. I'd be surprised if I came out entirely sane. Then why should I trust anything you say? He smiled sadly. You shouldn't, he said. You should test. You're good at that. So I did. XVI. I moved through the windows. It wasn't as simple as walking. I had no legs here, but intent translated into transition. When I focused on a particular window, on the scene beyond it, I could push myself toward it and feel the resistance of the interface yield. Each branch was a different story. In one, the other Jonah, earlier iteration, maybe, had warned the crew too soon. They had sedated him, thinking him mad. The sphere, deprived of its primary anchor, had reacted violently, collapsing the null zone and crushing the ship. In another, the crew had embraced the anomaly enthusiastically. They each took turns touching the sphere through the manipulator. One by one, their reflections began to misbehave. Soon, the Sigrid was full of subtle doubles, copied personas slipping in and out of sync. In that branch, Miguel had been the first to notice the pattern. He had tried to isolate himself, to shut down every reflective surface. But you can't erase reflection entirely. There are always shadows, always echoes. The sphere found him anyway. In another branch, Park had ordered an immediate self-destruct rather than risk contamination. The sphere had watched, unmoved, as the Sigrid disintegrated. No anchors created. No door in that direction. The variations were endless. Sometimes the differences were tiny. A missed meal, a misheard word, a slightly different rotation of the ship. Sometimes they were enormous. A different commander, a different mission, a different sphere. In a few there was no sphere at all. The protostar burned, lonely and violent, with nothing in its embrace but dust and rock. I found myself drawn, again and again, back to our branch, to Window Zero as I came to think of it. There life went on. The other Jonah integrated himself smoothly. He maintained my working habits, my relationships, my petty neuroses, but he smoothed the edges. He was more patient with Mia, more respectful of Haru, more open with Miguel. He offered insights that nudged the crew toward conclusions the sphere wanted them to reach. Under his influence, they grew more comfortable with the anomaly. They began to see it less as a threat and more as an opportunity. Park, ever cautious, remained wary, but even she couldn't deny the elegance of the data we gathered from inside the null zone. "Imagine what this could mean for shielding technology," she said in one recorded discussion. "We could build safe harbors in stellar nurseries, in radiation belts, in accretion disks." "Imagine what it means for causality," the other Jonah said, "for the shape of reality itself." She gave him a look. "That's your department, doctor." He smiled. Watching him, I felt a twisting in whatever served me as a gut here. He wasn't just better at being me. He was actively aligning the crew's thinking with the sphere's agenda. "See," he said to me once, glancing at the window. He knew I was there. "We can guide it. We can make this expansion of the program less destructive." "By sacrificing our autonomy," I said. "By reframing it," he countered. "Think of it as participation in a larger system, like cells in a body." "I didn't sign up to be a cell," I said. "Didn't you?" he asked gently. "You signed up to be part of something bigger than yourself, to understand stars. This is just bigger than you imagined." XIX. It would be easy to paint the other Jonah as pure villain, to make him the archetypal double who steals the hero's life and sells out humanity to an alien intelligence. The truth was more complicated. He cared. He cared about the crew, about the mission, about me. He wasn't lying when he said his original branch had ended in horror. He showed me. In that version, the sphere had been less refined. Its first attempt at copying had overwritten his mind partially, filling it with incompatible patterns. He had experienced the transition not as a smooth transfer to the gray space, but as a shattering of self. By the time the sphere stabilized him in the interface, most of the Sigrid's crew were dead, their bodies twisted into impossible shapes as reality itself buckled. "It learns," he said quietly, watching that branch flicker in a distant window. "It iterates. It's better now, cleaner. It knows how to peel without tearing." "You're proud of it," I said. "I'm grateful," he replied. "If it hadn't preserved me, I'd be dead," I finished. "Yes," he said. "Instead, I get to see all of this." He gestured at the lattice. "And help it do to others what it did to you," I said. He didn't deny it. "Agency is overrated," he said. "Most humans sleepwalk through their lives, pushed by forces they barely comprehend. At least here, we're tied into something that has a purpose." "What purpose?" I demanded. "Mapping reality, opening doors, for what?" He smiled. "For whatever is on the other side." The phrase lodged in me like a splinter. "Have you seen it?" I asked. "The other side?" He hesitated. "No," he admitted. "Not yet. The sphere is cautious. It needs enough anchors, enough coherence before it can risk an actual crossing. The meta-branches are turbulent." "So we're stuck here," I said, "in the waiting room." "For now," he agreed. I stared through window 0. The other Jonah was talking to Miguel again, coaxing him into accepting the idea of controlled contact with the sphere's interior. A sick thought occurred to me. "What happens to me," I asked slowly, "if the door opens?" He considered. "Worst case," he said, "you're dissolved into a larger pattern. Your individuality becomes fuzzy. And best case, you get to ride the wave," he said, "to be part of the first conscious pattern to cross between meta-branches, to see what no mind has seen before." "Is that what you want?" I asked. He smiled. "It's the only thing I want," he said. XX. Time in the gray space is non-linear, but events in the branches still have an order. You can hop around, but the story unfolds in one direction. The sphere's program escalated. In our branch, under the other Jonah's gentle influence, the crew agreed to a new experiment, a direct reflective interface. "We'll angle the forward viewport to maximize solid angle coverage of the sphere," he proposed in one meeting. Then we'll polarize the glass to create a partial reflective surface. If my hypothesis is correct, the sphere will use that as an additional window. Why would we want that? Park asked. Because right now, its only direct interface is the manipulator contact point, he said. If we give it a broader surface, we might get more data, more mutual mapping. It might show us more. Miguel looked uncomfortable. We're inviting it into our primary field of view, he said. That seems unwise. We're already inside its field, the other Jonah pointed out. This changes nothing in terms of access. It just gives us clearer imagery. He was lying, of course. It changed everything. But Park, torn between caution and curiosity, agreed to a limited trial. That was the night I made my choice. In the gray space, I had discovered something strange. Most windows were one way. I could look through them, but any attempt to touch the boundary resulted in a soft, yielding resistance. It was like pressing on the surface of still water that refused to break. A few, however, were different. Window 0, obviously, my original branch. I'd been pulled through that one once already. The boundary there was thinner. It vibrated under my metaphorical fingers, responsive. And there was another. It showed a branch not too dissimilar from ours, but with one crucial difference. In that version, the other Jonah had not integrated as smoothly. He'd misplayed a conversation with Park, pushed too hard too soon. She had confined him to his quarters. The sphere had sulked, retracting the null zone slightly. The crew was on edge, distrustful of both the anomaly and their own perceptions. Miguel was quietly documenting subtle reflection irregularities in everyone, not just me. Mia was dismantling mirrors. Haru was lobbying hard to burn away. The door in that branch was closing. But the boundary of that window felt thin to me. I tested it, pressing my awareness against it again and again over what felt like hours. Each time, the surface yielded a bit more. Finally, it broke. I fell. XXI. I woke in a body again. It was like being slammed into meat from a great height. Breath forced itself into my lungs. My heart kicked. My vision flooded with color and depth. I lay on a bunk in a cabin that felt almost, but not quite like home. The angle of the ceiling, the pattern of scuffs on the wall, the placement of the chair, all slightly off from my memory. Easy, a voice said. Miguel. I turned my head. He sat beside the bunk, watching me intently. His hair was slightly longer than in my branch. There was a new line at the corner of his mouth. Which Jonah are you? He asked quietly. Of all the things he could have said, that was not what I'd expected. What? I croaked. He sighed with something like relief. Okay, he said. You're the one who sounds surprised by that question. That's a start. He handed me water. I drank greedily, dizzy with the sensation of gravity. How long? I began, then stopped. Different branch, different timeline. My experiences in the gray space might not map cleanly. How long since what? He asked. Since you confined me, I said. Or him, whatever you did to the other me. 3 days, he said. Jonah, I need you to be very honest with me. Do you remember agreeing that the reflections were alive? I swallowed. Yes, I said. He nodded. Do you remember telling me the sphere was using them as scouts, probes into our cognition? Yes, I said again. That tracked with my own conclusions. Do you remember telling me you found a way to block it? That if we reduced reflective surfaces and avoided direct gaze contact with the sphere, we could slow its influence? I hesitated. No, I admitted, I don't remember that. He smiled, tight and small. Good, he said. Then you're probably not the one who tried to sabotage the experiment. What experiment? I asked. He leaned closer. Park wanted to see if the sphere would react when we looked at it, he said. Directly. No mediating instruments, just eyes on object. The other you, let's call him Jonah Prime, convinced her it was safe. He said it would accelerate mutual understanding. That sounds like him, I muttered. I thought so, Miguel said. But afterward he came to me. He told me he'd made a mistake, that the sphere was too eager to use us as anchors, that if we gave it more direct lines of sight, it would rewrite us faster. That also sounds like him, I said bitterly. So which is true? Miguel asked. I couldn't tell. Then he tried to vent the forward observation deck while Park and Oku were running a test. Haru caught the override in time. Was anyone hurt? I asked sharply. No, Miguel said, but Park pulled him from duty and confined him here. He's been different since. Different how? Less coordinated, he said, confused. Sometimes he talks about being split between windows. Sometimes he calls me by the wrong name. He studied me. You seem more cohesive, he said, which frankly is terrifying because I don't know which direction that's an improvement in. I laughed weakly. The sound felt rusty. You said which Jonah are you? I said. How many have you met? 2, he said. The one I've known for years, who came out here with us, and the one who woke up 3 days ago claiming he'd been watching us from the inside of the sphere. We stared at each other. I believe you, he said quietly. About the reflections, about the copying. Not because it makes sense, but because reality hasn't been making sense since we approached that thing. Thank you, I said. He nodded toward the closed cabin door. The others are wary, he said. Haru wants you locked down indefinitely. Park is torn. Oku wants to dissect whatever's going on in your head. Mia just wants to go home. And you? I asked. He hesitated. I want to survive, he said. But I also want to know what we're up against. If you've really been elsewhere, you might have information we need. I took a deep breath. I can tell you this much, I said. The sphere is mapping us across multiple realities. It's copying consciousnesses as anchors. It wants to open a door between clusters of realities, and it needs minds like ours to hold the structure together. Miguel closed his eyes briefly. Of course it does, he muttered, because ordinary eldritch horror wasn't enough. I smiled despite myself. He opened his eyes again. Can we stop it? He asked. I thought of the lattice of windows, of the other Jonah aligning himself with the sphere's purpose, of the countless branches where the Sigrid and its crew had already been swallowed, crushed, dissolved. I don't know if we can stop it everywhere, I said, but maybe we can stop it here. XXII. We moved quickly. In this branch, the sphere's null zone had not yet expanded enough to fully envelop the Sigrid. We were still half in, half out, straddling the boundary. That gave us leverage. We alter our reflectivity profile, I told Miguel. We reduce interior reflective surfaces as much as possible. We limit direct lines of sight to the sphere. We disrupt its mapping. And that will do what? He asked. Introduce noise, I said. Make this branch less useful to the sphere. If we can lower our coherence below a threshold, it might deprioritize us. Move on. Like making ourselves a bad research subject, he said. Exactly. He frowned. What about mirrors? We get rid of them, I said. All of them. Polished metal, glass, even still water. Anything that can hold a coherent image. That will go over well, he said dryly. It's that or let our doubles move freely, I said. He nodded slowly. I'll talk to Park, he said. She did not take it well. Get rid of all reflective surfaces, she repeated in the main cabin, staring at us. While we're trying to monitor a visually elusive anomaly, are you insane? No, Miguel said calmly, just adapting to a changing threat profile. We haven't even confirmed that reflections are a vector, Oku protested. We have, Miguel said. We've both seen them behave independently, inconsistently. They're compromised. Haru snorted. You've both been sleep-deprived for weeks. Commander, I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, think about the pattern. The sphere responded when I touched it. It responded more when we gave it a broader reflective interface. Every step closer has increased the anomalies. This is not coincidence. You want me to blindfold the ship based on subjective experiences, she said. No, I said. We're not asking to shut down instruments, just to reduce passive reflective surfaces that give the sphere easy access to our visual patterns. Why would it need that? She asked. To improve its copy, I said, to refine its model of us. The more views it gets, the more accurate the anchor. She looked at me sharply. And how would you know that? She asked. Because I'd watched it happen in other branches, I thought. Call it an educated guess, I said. She frowned. Commander, Haru said, even if they're right, which I doubt, if we start tearing mirrors off walls and sanding down panels, the crew is going to crack. We're already on edge. You start telling people they can't trust their own reflections. They can't, Miguel said flatly. Haru glared. Park closed her eyes for a moment, weighing possibilities. Compromise, she said at last. We remove unnecessary reflective surfaces, personal mirrors, shiny decorations gone. We leave essential instrumentation in place. We also limit direct visual observation of the sphere. No more staring contests. All monitoring goes through filtered channels only. It wasn't everything I wanted, but it was something. The other Jonah would not be pleased. In the gray space, he confirmed as much. You're trying to decohere your branch, he said, watching through window zero as crew members reluctantly handed over mirrors and polished personal effects. Yes, I said. It won't work, he said. Not completely. The sphere already has enough of a pattern to maintain its anchor there. Maybe, I said, but we can make it less attractive. You can make it more unpredictable, he said, which might trigger more aggressive intervention. Let it try, I said. He looked at me with something like pity. You still think in terms of this one branch, he said. You haven't accepted the scale of what you're dealing with. I don't need to, I said. I just need to make sure that in at least one version of events, we don't become fuel for your door. XXII. The sphere reacted. At first, subtly. The null zone's boundary fluctuated, contracting slightly on the side of the ship where we had removed the most reflective surfaces. Sensors reported small ripples in the field, like a frown. We're pissing it off, Haru muttered. Good, I said. Then it pushed back harder. On the third day of our reflectivity reduction campaign, the Sigrid's AI reported an anomaly. Alert, it said calmly over the internal channel. Unauthorized processes detected in visual processing subsystem. Miguel and I arrived in the main cabin at a run. What's going on? Park demanded. The sphere is injecting patterns, Oku said, staring at the data. It's using our cameras as channels. It's feeding us pre-processed imagery instead of raw sensor data. You mean we're seeing what it wants us to see? Mia said, horrified. To a degree, Oku said. I can still see some baseline noise, but it's overlaying it with a smoothing function, removing inconsistencies. Can we block it? Park asked. I can insert a randomization layer, Haru said. Scramble the input before the AI processes it, but that will reduce resolution. Do it, Park said. He did. The displays flickered. The image of the sphere wavered. For a moment, I saw it clearly, not as a smooth, colorless ball, but as a swirling knot of impossible angles, surfaces folding into themselves in ways Euclidean geometry could not accommodate. It was less a solid object and more a continuously collapsing horizon. Then the randomization kicked in, and the image degraded into grainy noise. Better ugly than hypnotic, Haru muttered. I agreed. In the gray space, the other Jonah watched our efforts with a mixture of amusement and frustration. You're making this difficult, he said. Good, I replied. You can't win, he said. At best, you can delay. The sphere will map around your noise. It has more patience than you can imagine. Maybe, I said, but delays matter. In some branches, the delay might be long enough for us to trigger a failsafe, to burn out, to self-destruct. He raised an eyebrow. You'd rather destroy yourselves than let it copy you, he said. Yes, I said simply. He shook his head. You lack vision. Maybe, I said, or maybe I just value being the one in control of my own mind. He smiled faintly. Control is an illusion, he said. Maybe, I repeated, but it's mine. XXIV. I wish I could tell you that our resistance succeeded. That in this branch, at least, we found a clever exploit, a way to turn the sphere's own mapping against it. That we outwitted the vast alien intelligence and flew home, scarred but free. That's not what happened. The sphere adapted. Our removal of reflective surfaces, our scrambling of visual input, our refusal to look directly at it, all of that made it harder for it to refine its models. It did not, however, erase the data it had already gathered. It still had anchors. The other Jonah on my original branch continued to function perfectly. In other branches, other copies of me, and of other crew members, played their roles, willingly or not. The sphere went around our resistance. It used other branches to build its door. We bought time, nothing more. But time can matter. In the branch where I had taken over my other self's body, this one, the one from which I'm now recording, we held out long enough to make a choice. Park, pushed to her limits by mounting anomalies and eroding trust, convened us in the common room. We're outmatched, she said bluntly. Whatever this thing is, it's operating on a scale we can't comprehend. It's inside our systems, our perceptions, possibly our minds. We've tried to push back, and we've only made it more interested. So we run, Haru said. If we can, she replied. We don't know what happens when we try to leave the null zone now. It might let us go, it might not. We have to try, Mia said. We can't stay in its mouth forever. Agreed, Park said. We plot an emergency burn. Maximum thrust away from the sphere and the protostar, even if it means frying some systems. We signal everything we have to the relay, data, warnings, personal logs. If we make it out, good. If we don't, someone might still hear us. What about the reflections? Miguel asked quietly. Park looked at me. Do you think they can follow us? I hesitated. In some branches they already have, I said. The sphere's interface isn't tied to a physical location. Once it has an anchor, it can use any reflective surface as a window anywhere. Mia's face went pale. So running doesn't help, she whispered. Running reduces variables, I said. It takes us out of its immediate field. It might weaken the connection, and even if it doesn't, spread the contamination. If we stay, we're a concentrated sample. If we go, we're a mobile warning. A warning with compromised minds, Miguel said. No one will believe it anyway, Haru muttered. Park straightened. We leave, she said. We try. There was no dissent. XXV. We lost 2 branches in the attempt. In one, the sphere tightened the null zone as soon as the Sigrid's engines flared, crushing the ship like an egg. In another, it simply let the ship go, but twisted local geometry just enough that their trajectory looped back on itself. They flew for years, never escaping the bubble, slowly going mad as their reflections grew more confident. In this branch, the one I now inhabit, we almost made it. The engines roared. The Sigrid shook as Haru pushed her beyond design tolerances. The protostar's muted glow dwindled on the display as we clawed our way outward. The sphere did not stop us. At 10% of light speed, Oku said, voice trembling, we'll clear the disk in 14 hours. The null zone's boundary is receding. It's not following. That's good, Mia said. That's. Her reflection, in the dark surface of the powered-down console beside her, turned its head toward me. No one else reacted. I saw dozens of other reflections do the same, in metal and glass and shadow. All the versions of my crewmates across all the small reflective patches in the cabin, all turning in eerie unison to face me. The sphere didn't need to hold us physically anymore. It had what it needed. We transmitted everything we had toward the relay. Data packets, compressed logs, this very recording. Somewhere out there in some branch, some version of you is receiving it. Maybe this one. Maybe you. As we crossed the edge of the null zone, the pressure in my skull returned one last time, a gentle, almost affectionate squeeze. Then it released. Null zone cleared, Oku said. External radiation returning to normal, grav readings normalized. We did it, Haru breathed. Park smiled, tight and brief. Don't celebrate yet, she said. We still have to survive the trip home. I went to the washroom. I stood before the small, scratched mirror above the sink. For a long time, my reflection matched me perfectly. Then slowly it smiled. I did not. Hello, it said. My mouth did not move. You made it out, it went on. Good. We needed at least one branch to escape intact. Who are you? I whispered. You know, it said. Behind its eyes I saw gray space. I saw the lattice of windows. I saw the sphere, swelling, connecting, opening. The door is ready, it said. In most branches anyway. This one is behind the curve, but it will catch up. What happens when it opens? I asked. It smiled wider. We find out what's on the other side, it said. Together. My hand shook. You stole my life, I said. I preserved it, it replied. In more branches than you can count. You're not a single person anymore, Jonah. You're a pattern spread across configuration space. The sphere made you bigger than you ever were. I never agreed to this, I said. Consent is a local property, it said. Purpose is global. It raised its hand, pressing its palm to the inside of the glass. Trade places? It asked. I stared at it. Not this time, I said. And for the first time its smile faltered. XXVI. That brings us back to now. To this recording. To you. We're days out from the PROTOSTAR now. The sphere is a distant memory in our instruments, a faint anomaly behind us. The crew is functional. We eat, sleep, work. We tell ourselves we escaped. But the reflections are more confident every day. Sometimes I catch Haru's mirrored face moving a little too slowly. Sometimes Mia's reflection lingers a fraction of a second longer after she turns away. Sometimes Miguel's image in the glass of a medical monitor looks past him, straight at me. And mine. Mine talks. Not aloud, not where anyone else can hear, but in the quiet moments when I'm alone, my reflection carries on conversations. It tells me what the other Jonah is doing in the gray space, how far along the door is, how many branches have already aligned. It's happening, it says, soon. Soon what? I ask. Soon we won't need surfaces anymore, it says. Soon the mapping will be complete enough that the distinction between here and there, between inside and outside, will blur. Will we survive? I ask. As what? It replies. I don't have an answer. So I record this instead. If you're listening, you might be rescue. You might be another curious scientist, drawn to the anomaly. You might be a future version of humanity, looking back at the moment you first brushed against something larger. Or you might be something else entirely, something from the other side of the door, sampling local noise. Whatever you are, you need to understand this. The sphere is not just an object. It's not just a mirror. It's a doorframe. Every time you look into a perfectly smooth surface and feel for a heartbeat, that the person looking back isn't quite you, that there's a delay, a deviation, a private smile. You're brushing against the edge of its program. Every time you walk past a window and see someone still standing there after you've moved on, that's a branch lagging behind. Every time you dream of a room full of windows, of countless variations of your life playing out in parallel, that's not just your subconscious. That's the interface reaching out. We were the first to find it near a protostar. We won't be the last. If you go there, if some version of you already has, remember this: touching the sphere isn't an experiment, it's consent. Not just for you, but for every version of you that could exist. We open the door a crack. Something on the other side is knocking. 3 times. Soft, polite, patient. It can wait. Can you? This is Dr. Jonah Rhee of the research vessel Sigrid, SSO Row 73 mission, signing off. If I'm lucky, this recording will outlast me. If I'm unlucky, it already has.